Please go ahead, ma'am. We are live now.
Thank you, Anup. So we'll start now. Yeah. Good afternoon from ASSOCHAM. Thank you for joining us for the second virtual session on Industry 4.0 customer adoption. The first of the webinar series was on Industry 4.0, an overview with a focus on MSME. Companies that seek to embrace Industry 4.0 often have different starting points regardless of where they start from or the industry they are in. Companies stand to benefit from Industry 4.0. Organizations can truly achieve the benefits and the impact of Industry 4.0 by embracing it holistically across the entire organizations by moving from a factory focused initiative to a company wide implementation of Industry 4.0 digital initiatives. The promise of Industry 4.0 is realized by connecting all areas of business together, such as logistics, procurement, production, sales, and services, so that every step is orchestrated from a design to deliver to configuration and operations. Integration across the entire enterprises ensures that no area works in a silo and customers can avoid gaps or delays that keep from delivering the best possible experience to their customers. During this session, you can learn how different organizations across the globe embraced Industry 4.0 concepts to achieve business outcomes. Mr. Pawan Kumar, co-chair, ASTAM Southern Region IT Council and chief expert and head of APJ SAP platform adoption and advisory. I request Mr. Pawan Kumar to kindly give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Nandita. Thank you, Uma Tarina from ASSOCHAM. Thanks everyone for joining the session today. We have a wonderful speaker today, Arjun Kumar Rao, joining from SAP Germany. So I would like to introduce Arjun before I hand it over to him. So maybe next slide, Arjun, probably, yeah. So Arjun is a chief product owner with the SAP Digital Supply Chain Organization at SAP Germany, to be precise in Munich area. So he has extensive experience in the space of digital supply chain, primarily on the areas of planning, scheduling, and manufacturing. So when it comes to his career journey, right, he spent first decade of his career in the space of consulting primarily in India and Europe regions, and then he joined SAP. So we are so lucky that he joined us, decided to join SAP, and he started leading the SAP strategy for Industry 4.0. And additionally, he also leads the strategic initiatives across digital supply chain. Yeah, quickly introducing about himself and welcome Arjun, and audience are really looking forward to hear from you. So what Arjun is going to cover today is, if you look at in the earlier session, we got a glimpse of what is Industry 4.0, right, from Mr. Satyanarayan Sahu. And now in the current session, Arjun is going to cover how Industry 4.0 has been adopted by different customers across the globe. I mean, not in India or APJ, but outside of in India. Because in the earlier session, we kind of slightly covered an examples around India as well, right? So we wanted to give a different view of how this has been adopted globally. So I'm handing over to Arjun.
Pawan, thank you so much for having me over, and also Asushan. I'm looking forward to the session, more or less. Very cool. So I would start off with a recap from the last webinar, right? So Satya, I think, has been instrumental in trying to showcase what Industry 4.0 actually is and how that has basically evolved, right? And that's basically what I start off with, right? So we moved from Industry 1.0 to Industry 4.0. And as we all know, Industry 4.0 is no longer a myth as such, but has been adopted by many customers across the globe, right? Quick recap, the first industry revolution started off with mechanical power that basically facilitated with the help of water, steam power, and so on, right? This led to the evolution into the second phase, which was about how can I mass produce at scale, right? And the third part was when digitalization basically met mass production. That means how can electronics and information technology systems work together to automate different processes. Fourth one is all about higher productivity and the best customer experience that we can bring onto the table by making use of technology as an enabler to facilitate different processes along the different paths, if I have to put it through, right? We, Satya also basically touched about how SAP has been instrumental in the space of Industry 4.0, right? Industry 4.0 was a coined term from an industry or academic perspective. SAP has been instrumental in starting off the journey very early and also basically forming different alliances with universities, with industries, with different technology partners, and so on. Right? SAP coined the term Industry 4.0, which is basically our strategy of how we basically would evolve or help our customers evolve into utilizing technologies such as machine learning, artificial intelligence, or IoT and cloud to help facilitate their scalability of their processes. And today we will speak more about how different use cases have been realized by multiple customers from around the globe. Open Industry 4.0 Alliance is one such alliance where we believe that it's not just about SAP, right? It's about all partners coming in together to help each other to be more successful. And that's exactly why we wanted to emphasize on how we believe the future of productivity could look like. Different trends. We see many countries basically having different policies that enable their companies, whether it's mid-sized companies, small-sized companies, or even large companies, to adopt Industry 4.0 different processes, right? One such example is also in India, where we have the Make in India initiative, right? Where Industry 4.0 is also a key theme for our companies, especially in the manufacturing area, to broaden their perspective, not just from a shop floor focused initiative, as Nandita was explaining at the start of the call, but it also goes broader, right? So going into the enterprise set and also into the ecosystem of that enterprise. ANZ has also been doing a lot with the German government, where there is a cooperation in place for Industry 4.0 to improve different competitiveness across that region as well. And SEA, we all know Southeast Asia is also pretty much focused on Industry 4.0 because they have a booming sector in the manufacturing space and have also have close collaboration in terms of Singapore, with Vietnam, with Malaysia, and so on. And the German government is now tying up with SEA to try and see how they can also help and learn from them on different initiatives that their companies are basically doing. Sustainability is an important factor across different governments. We all know the need of a climate action at this point, and sustainability is woven into Industry 4.0 initiatives in a very way to get that competitive advantage that most consumers are basically requesting their companies to. Moving through, I think we all know about the different challenges in the space of manufacturing, right? The biggest ones are, of course, it being siloed, disconnected, and having manual processes. But what is the implication because of these siloed approaches or manual processes, right? There's firstly inconsistent and low asset utilization overall. There are a lot of manually intensive actions that are needed. That means it's very costly from a labor standpoint. Thirdly, it's very difficult to optimize when you have disparate systems and disparate processes. And last but not the least, on a global level, due to the lack of data transparency, there is no consistent performance measurements that can be done across different plants, across different contract manufacturers, and so on, right? And basically, setting up an intelligent factory basically helps you to integrate IT, which is basically all your systems that facilitate your processes, and OT, that means the actual operational data that's generated out of machines, to capture that information and then orchestrate different processes in a more efficient way or even automate it as needed. And as you see here in the slide, there are a lot of partnerships that are needed. And that's exactly why SAP, for example, has started off an open alliance, which has different companies such as even Microsoft, such as partners such as Festo, even Endress and Hauser, who have joined us to basically benchmark and allow best practices to be followed across different industries. Yeah. And last but not the least, we speak about the 4 different pillars. I wouldn't deep dive into this slide as of now, but I will take that up as I cover it again. So today's topic, as we speak about, right, It's about how Industry 4.0 helps run a resilient and a sustainable supply chain. Our focus is going to be purely on enabling our customers become resilient or risk resilient and sustainable. And let's directly dive in to see what that means. Yeah, let's look at this. We all live in a global and network company, right? So at the end of 2000s started the era of globalization. What does that mean? Companies started expanding, started scaling different processes, whether they're manufacturing, whether the logistics processes, or even going towards outsourced manufacturing processes, right? And we saw that companies started slowly improving or broadening their footprint across the globe. This, of course, brought about a lot of benefits, such as cost saving. It brought a lot of benefits in terms of addressing different markets as such, but it also exposed supply chains to be more fragile. Why? It's very simple, right? Any disruption, whether it's because of supply volatility, labor inventory shortages, whether it's because of delayed shipments or plant shutdowns or high variable demands coming from different areas, resulted in having a bullwhip effect across the whole supply chain network, right? It caused a bullwhip across the network, and this resulted in having a very, very fragmented approach to resilience. In fact, supply chains became very reactive to risks that were basically thrown at them at an early stage. And this is exactly where we believe companies need to move from being reactive in terms of their supply chain to being more resilient in terms of their supply chain. And how? That's basically how Industry 4.0 lays a good foundation in terms of a pathway to being more resilient. A reactive supply chain. Let me start with that, right? Because I introduced that term. A reactive supply chain is something that is prone to being disrupted. That means if there's a disruption in terms of supply, you will definitely face consequences in terms of redundancy or even go towards more costlier suppliers to fulfill that gap. A high variability in terms of demand implies there is a very reactive way of fulfillment planning. You have no direct influence in terms of how to basically balance out these. And interrupted manufacturing processes meant shifting of workforce expansion across different regions globally that is needed. And that meant it's more time consuming as such. There were continuous inventory shortages. That means your inventories were not placed at the right place at the right time in the right lot size, right? Delayed shipments. We all heard about the news that fostered Suez Canal blockage, right? That resulted in a lot of delayed shipments. What does that mean? Companies had to take the expenses on their own to expedite other sources or modes of transport to expedite their delivery. And last but not the least, whenever there's an asset breakdown, there's that always consequently resulted in unplanned maintenance and also a shift in terms of labor and workforce to meet that unplanned maintenance, right? In terms of moving into a more resilient supply chain, what do we call this? Whenever there is a disrupted supply, I think there's a healthy balance between global and also local suppliers. High variable demand results in a more continuous cross-functional planning. And I will talk about a specific use case, how cross-functional planning is enabled. Interrupted manufacturing. We all know how important manufacturing processes are. It has to be zero downtime. Industry 4.0's digitalization on the whole enables the zero downtime processes. And last but not the least, we spoke about inventory shortages, optimizations, right, and delayed shipments. All of these can be optimized in terms of inventory optimization algorithms that basically help you to have the right inventory at the right place at the right time, or adaptive logistic carrier networks where you're able to track in real time. And last, you're able to predict a maintenance or a service such that any asset breakdown can be actually navigated through in a more seamless way. Moving through to the next one. How do or what do customers want to achieve through this resilience, right? We've basically broken it down into 4 strategic themes. One, they want to be more agile. That means They want to be able to sense, predict, and also respond to different changes and risks that are coming through into the market and insulate themselves from this disruption. That's the first key important thing the customers want to do. Secondly, they want to improve their productivity. Why? Because they want to meet the market demands in a highly demanding environment, right? Being able to not just produce in masses, that means in terms of mass production, but also cater to the needs of lot size one, that means highly individualized products that customers are demanding. Connectivity is another important aspect. They want to be able to collaborate a little bit more efficiently. They want their suppliers to, for example, provide more visibility across the network so that companies can basically easily navigate different routes to reach a common goal, right? And last but not the least is being able to ethically source different materials across the whole product genealogy or value chain and eliminate waste as much as possible and also be carbon neutral processes and also enable carbon neutral processes is a very important factor for our customers. And hence, to summarize, agility plays a really big key factor for our customers to basically sense how the different motions and disruptions are basically taking place and help them to navigate through that. They're able to increase their productivity to meet the market demands by not just producing mass produced items, but also going towards more individualized products. Connectivity, they're able to collaborate efficiently across the whole value chain with their suppliers. And lastly, they're able to improve their green line along with their top line. Moving through, what does Industry 4.0 mean from an SAP perspective? We basically broke it down into four strategic themes. One is the intelligent product. Two, it's all about the intelligent factory and logistics. Three, it's about the intelligent assets as such. And last, we do believe that but all of the above plays a crucial factor to empower the people at the end. So what does intelligent products even mean, right? Intelligent products simply means customers are able to build products that can self-monitor themselves and also improve based on different conditions. Intelligent factories and logistics is all about improving that productivity and agility in the shop floor and being able to orchestrate connected processes together. A quick example of that is being able to produce at scale by orchestrating intra-logistics movements from the warehouse in an automated fashion such that your production needs meets the WIP transport needs. Yeah. And all of these are done at the end to empower the people, as I mentioned, right? Why? So that they can take intelligent decisions. Their processes can be more data driven. And with the IT OT integration, you're basically able to get the insights that you never had before. And how are all of these basically enabled is, of course, via technology enablers. Few of them should be named are such as AI and ML. Of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning has played a very vital role. We speak about different use cases of AI and ML in the space of Industry 4.0, but something that comes on the top of my mind is basically visual inspection. That means you check for quality non-conformance processes, and based on the non-conformance, you're able to automate the next step in terms of a supplier collaboration, for example, to work on that non-conformance. Other enablers are, of course, cloud and edge because they provide that scalability and zero production downtime facility for your shop floor to basically work at best and also scale as needed, right? Augmented reality is also important. This empowers your people to perform the right task and also gives them the right amount of knowledge at the right time to be able to do their job, right? And there are many more. I'm just giving you examples of this. And SAP is in the heart and center of this, working along with our whole ecosystem to enable our customers to achieve what they desire to do. Moving through a little bit more in terms of what our customers and business-driven needs have been outlined and what's our strategy in general from an Industry 4.0, right? As I mentioned, intelligent products, basically the need arises from being able to differentiate yourselves against your competition by providing intelligent features such as a watch, right? We all are used to intelligent products at scale, especially in India. We've noticed a big surge in terms of digitalization. India is well ahead of the curve in terms of consumers accepting intelligent products, right? The demand for individualized products in India has basically skyrocketed. In fact, India for me is running in lot size one. Everything is customized and can be customized. And that's a really big benefit. And but however, companies on the other hand side now need to basically be more adaptive, right? They need to have more seamless engineering and manufacturing processes. Why? Because if they have to differentiate themselves from the competition and provide individualized products along with doing mass production, they need to be able to leverage data across the whole product life cycle to improve the quality and meet the customer demand by providing it as soon as possible in terms of availability. Intelligent factories on the other hand side. What is the business driver here? As I mentioned, now companies need to balance between two things, right? One is being able to mass produce. Why? Because you still need to produce at scale. You still need to produce all of those fast selling products that you have and provide that into the market as soon as possible. Along with this, as I mentioned, you need to be balancing out the individualized products. Why? Because many companies, many consumers are demanding exactly that. I want my product to be customized to my specific needs. That's exactly what the consumers are requesting. So how can companies basically balance this mass production needs versus individualized product needs and still maintain that efficiency levels is something what customers are striving to achieve. And how do they do that? Is by having a strategy to automate production supplies and manufacturing processes by leveraging smart machines. That means IoT plays a key role here, right? You're able to sense what is the exact thing that is needed to be done in your machine at a specific point in time, in the right temperature, for example, or at the right pressure points, for example. And based on that, you're able to firstly be as autonomous because you can orchestrate the manufacturing processes. Secondly, it's also fast. Why? Because you don't have manual interventions in between. You have events that basically trigger consequent actions in an automated fashion. And lastly, it's also cost efficient. Why? Because you're investing firstly in the technology, and secondly, you're able to automate different processes, and thirdly, you're able to orchestrate different connected processes along that path. Yeah. Intelligent assets, on the other hand side, is all about avoiding downtime of equipment, right? If you have to produce at scale in an efficient way, you also need to be able to avoid your equipments from failing over a period of time. Why? Because you want to, of course, increase your overall asset performance, right? And you want to guarantee sustainability altogether. And how does this happen? Is basically companies are trying to evolve from being more reactive, as I mentioned previously, in their asset management strategy, to being more proactive by data-driven processes that help to predict an asset failure and also consequently schedule the right asset needs, such as maintenance and so on, at the right time, at the right moment in time. All of these are for the people, as I mentioned. Industry 4.0 is about enabling people by automating redundant tasks, right? And for people now, what does that mean? It means they need to now channel their focus and efforts from more manual efforts that they used to do to more data-driven processes. That means they need to be able to take intelligent decisions that are needed and focus on what is the most efficient work that they would like to do. And that's exactly what is listed here. Customers want to have reduced risks of manual errors. That's the first thing in the top of the customer's mind. They want to improve decision making. That means it's no longer about best guess of how a thing should be done. It's not about I did this before for the last 15 years, 16 years, and this will also work in this time. It's about driving innovation such that you have all the levers to take the right decisions because of the transparency that is generated. And last but not the least, they want to improve people's performance, as I said, from stopping redundant tasks to focusing on what's most needed to be done. Yeah, and how is that done? Is by providing real-time data decision support for that connected and informed worker that we spoke about previously. Yeah. Now let's look at different use cases. Yeah, I've shortlisted 5 to 6 use cases so that you get a healthy flavor. I've taken examples from across retail, across utilities, across automotive, cross industries as well, so that you have a good idea and understanding of how traditional scenarios before Industry 4.0 were working, and what does the new world scenario mean. And these are from real customers who've been able to achieve a significant boost in terms of the value drivers that they wanted to achieve. Yeah. I start off with going top down. That means I start off with the traditional scenario first, and then I go to the new world scenario in terms of how this is happening. Yeah. And this is already happening in India, right? So whatever I'm going to explain right now in terms of running smart stores, it's already happening in India. And I think there needs to be more and more companies doing this going forward to meet the needs of the consumers. That is really challenging at this stage. Let's look at the traditional scenario in terms of how smart stores can basically transform consumer experience over the period. In a traditional scenario, what happens? A shopper basically enters the store anonymously. That means there is zero history available in terms of what that consumer's choices are or likings are and so on. So there's zero insights possible. The interaction with the consumers is more or less captured when he's exiting from that store, right? That means you're doing a billing and then you're checking out at a point of sale, right? And any valuable interaction that has happened is basically not been captured. It's basically lost because of zero experiences to how to capture that insights going forward, right? This also means that the staff who are in that store has zero access to real-time inventory. That means they have to be aware of all of the inventory that is there, firstly, because there's zero systems that basically support real-time inventory information for them, or incoming deliveries especially plays also a critical component here, right? And staff just simply can't guide the customer better in this case. And there is zero ability to differentiate themselves from any other shopkeeper that the consumer might have entered previously, right? So there's no personalized offers. There's no other special consumer experience that they can basically look forward to receive. And stores are basically exposed to price competition in such a market environment, right? Because there is online pure play that is coming through right now where they're delivering direct to consumer D2C, right? And their consumers or suppliers are basically able to differentiate themselves as compared to the stores that are there, right? But what does this mean from a new world scenario? In the new world scenario, it's pretty much simple. Shoppers are recognized and approached according to different privacy settings. That means a consumer, even though he's anonymous, the shopkeepers are basically able to correlate a specific kind of behavior trait based on that. How? By basically doing a smart clientele. That means we could basically pre-process data in terms of preferences, in terms of liking and dislikes, to basically benchmark against how consumer behavior, typical behavior is. How is that done? It's of course done by consumer behavior being captured anonymously so that there is a data integrity as well from different smart shelves, right? We all heard about Amazon Go, which is basically a grocery store where you are taking items and there's an automated billing process and so on. That's one good example as well. In fact, at SAP, we also have our own smart store, which is basically built where we are trying to do exactly the same for our consumers to have that experience in real life. I think Satya might have spoken about the experience center in the last calls as well. How does this work, right? In the new world scenario, as I mentioned, so we've been able to cluster consumer behavior over a period of time through their actions at the specific store. Previously, we've been able to anonymize them, but still have their behavior associated to a cluster, right? And based on their interaction, there are real-time responses coming through for that customer demand signal, whichever is generated, and replenishment is basically accelerated in terms of basically RFID enabled stock information across different stores, and also possibilities to orchestrate inventory movements between stores is also now possible. Yeah, and that's exactly what we've highlighted here in terms of the new world scenario. And last but not the least, we've seen so many smart stores have a very specialized way in which consumer experience has been catered to. A good example from India is Van Heusen. Van Heusen has a smart store where you have a mirror in which you can basically, you don't have to try your outfit, right? You can go and stand there, select your outfit, and based on the selection of the outfit, it automatically gets applied to your mirror image. This gives an exquisite experience just to get a feel of what I'm trying to say, right? We see, of course, based on this, what does it mean for the company in itself? There's an increase in inventory turnover. We've seen a rough range of 5 to 15%, and it can vary from customer to customer and from one company to another. There's also improvement in terms of how the productivity is channeled across the merchandising company. And lastly, we also see there's a reduction in terms of store operating costs as well. I'm sure you might have questions, but we will park that to the fag end, and I'm more than happy to answer certain questions that you might have. Looking at the next example that we have, or use case, is about individualized product offering for a smart car. Yeah. What happens in a traditional scenario, right? There is inefficient development process starting from the engineering of that particular car to its manufacturing to its delivery and so on. Why? Because there are so many variants associated to a car manufacturing. In the traditional scenario, you should have very limited number of variants offered. Why? Because the overall costing associated to the product cannot be simply justified based on having the traditional scenario. Yeah. The existence of a new variant as an independent product is super difficult for them. Why? Because there's a lot of inconsistency, firstly, in terms of how that variant is being executed. And secondly, there are errors when you propagate it downstream. That means when you go from the demand of the variant to the actual production of it, to the actual supplier supplying it just in time, there's a lot of inconsistencies across the network or value chain. Yeah. Individualized product or production engineering processes are very limited and in fact are very time consuming. That means customers need to wait an extended period of time for their specific car to be made available, and hence they basically go and select only that is actually available such that they can get the car faster. Yeah. This inefficient and error-prone variant fulfillment basically results in a high lead time and also cost, and that's how traditionally scenarios were basically being done. Yeah. In the new world, just giving an example from SAP perspective, is we of course have our cloud-based S4HANA, which is our ERP system, right? Enterprise Resource Planning System, and we have something called as Intelligent Product Design Solution, which provides bill of materials to be configurable as possible. That means it can adjust to the needs of the variants to all of the components that you actually need to have. This rule-based management system basically helps ensure accuracy, firstly, across the product design, to the product engineering, to the product manufacturing, all together by providing seamless flexibility with the support of different multidisciplined designs that we actually can tailor to with the need of the configurable material. And with the tailored product specifications now being generated to meet the needs of the variants across the globe, there is a different way in which they can interact or interface between the point of sales, that means with the consumer directly at that particular checkpoint, and the sales system, which is basically generating the sales order for that specific car, and gives a greater consistency in terms of how they can source different materials to be able to cater to the variants that they basically have. What does this do? This enables the suppliers to collaborate with the, so I'm now talking about automotive suppliers collaborating with the automotive manufacturer altogether, right? It provides a collaboration platform to basically help them to reduce lead times to meet the needs of these different variants and also accelerates time to market. And not to forget, there's an uptime that needs to be kept in the automotive industry, right? That means OEE, takt time are very crucial factors for them. With the automatic updates of bombs based on different variants, based on different configurable materials and routing, engineering meets manufacturing in a more efficient way. And this results in being able to meet the needs of our consumers or consumers that are demanding at this point for personalized vehicles delivered as quickly as possible. And not to forget, in almost the same price range as a specific vehicle that was mass produced. And this results in a higher customer satisfaction, meaning them being more brand loyal as such, and has seen an increase in revenue, firstly in terms of revenue from the new products, and also generates a different source of a bill of business models as well, such as subscription-based models going through. The next example that we have is from the retail side as well. Yeah, this is all about creating new different business models going through. We saw that from a car perspective, automotive side. Now we go into a more retail perspective so that you can basically correlate to what is exactly happening through. Yeah. In the traditional scenarios, customers shop for groceries, right? This is very, very simple example so that you can really correlate to what is exactly happening. We all do this, right? We go to a grocery a market. We basically select specific vegetables, specific fruits, specific ingredients that are needed for our meals, right? And basically based on the shopping list as such that we basically select different grocery items. The store staff, again, similar to what we explained in the first step, they lack information to make certain recommendations. Of course, they are aware of the different shelves that the inventory is placed. They know where the vegetables are, but that's not the information that basically is what the consumer requesting, right? It goes way beyond that. No customer history is maintained other than the ones that is available at the end in terms of your billing. And there are no recipe guidances that are in place or no information related to calorie such or nutritional values other than a backlist in terms of all of the specific ingredients added to manufacture a specific product. And usually consumers don't want to sit and read through all of that information because it is currently time consuming. And secondly, also sometimes something that consumers themselves cannot correlate to or understand on the fly. Yeah. Items then that you're bought from the shopping area have basically taken home. These are basically either complete or incomplete. It can depend on whether all of the items are available. Key items can also be forgotten because you're dependent on certain information that you have basically been written down, right? And there is zero added customer value, and there's nothing to differentiate in terms of retail services that was there. In the new world scenario, customers are subscribing to meal kit services now, right? And they're basically provided with home cooked meals based on their basic preferences in terms of their taste, physical and exercise needs, or individual preferences and goals that they want to reach out towards. Customers basically receive these meals and provide feedback to the specific retailer. And based on that feedback, the retailers are able to flexibly take into account take this into account, use certain machine learning algorithms to improve their recipes over a period of time. They are also able to recommend certain interactive processes. So that means you're able to recommend certain nutritional artifacts to the consumer of the meal kits. And then basically you're also able to offer a holistic set that basically nurtures your consumer needs at the end, right? Last but not the least, there is a continuous interaction between the consumer of the meal kit with the nutrition expert, which could be a person who's getting the recommendations from a machine learning algorithm, along with his or her existing experience in terms of nutrition artifacts, and they're able to recommend this to the consumer and also build them to meet their specific needs and goals. Yeah, the overall trend that is generated through this process by the consumer with the company basically can also then be analyzed to help them improve by giving web-based recommendations when they're striving to search for specific nutritional needs as well. And that's exactly what many of you might also be seeing in real life today when you're going to Google and searching for specific nutritional artifacts. There are certain recommendations popping up. This is because they're able to capture the information of your preferences, of your goals, of your body needs, and they're able to give you personalized recommendations and potentially also deliver certain specific ingredients or even home cooked meals to you, or have pickup services where you can easily go there and pick it up directly. Yeah. Moving through onto the next use case that I have selected for you. My PPT is stuck. Okay. This is about being able to do cross-functional planning that we meant, right? Why? What is the need? Consumers see a huge demand surge, right? There's a huge demand surge on the consumer side. But on the other hand side, you have a very inefficient processes. And then the second side, the supply availability is also reduced, right? A good example of this could also be the semiconductor chip shortages, right? There's a high demand for cars to be produced, but however, e-mobility cars to be produced or electric cars to be produced, which actually needs certain chips, microchips to be produced. But the demand and the supply are imbalanced, right? That means there's a higher demand, lesser supply availability. And in a traditional scenario, what happens? Usually they do a finite capacity and production plan, telling, hey, this is how this is my overall capacity from a machine perspective. This is my total capacity from a labor perspective. And based on that capacity, there are very limited options in terms of scenarios that you could basically create in terms of demand fulfillment. Yeah, there is no interactive way in which you can adjust capacities based on any downturns in terms of capacity or uptimes in terms of capacity. That means if you're adding new capacity or there is a reduction due to an asset downtime, there is zero to no interactive capabilities that are available. And customers today our customers today lack simple simulation capabilities for long-term planning. Yeah, they're not able to simulate different scenarios to see what is the outcome, what can the actions that they can take, and so on. They manually try to calculate different requirements. That means demand is generated into a supply, right? So they try to break down the higher level demand of a product into its individual component demand, if I have to call it that way. And they're basically looking at manual approaches to manage different conflicts. That means if there are specific alerts that are generated or they see that there is a bottleneck situation, they're trying to find out how can they manually able to fine tune this based on their best knowledge that they basically have gathered over a period of time. And there is also a delay, right? Because this is so manual, there's also a delay in identifying these critical bottleneck situations that are occurring over a period. This means that you have the potential to increase your safety buffers. That means your inventory is skyrocketing, right? Because you have zero visibility. Secondly, you're trying to fulfill as much as possible based on best guess. So you're overstocking at this point in time, and different warehouses and the cost related to those warehouses are also increasing. And lastly, you're not able to schedule your transport or your truckload build, as they call it, in an efficient manner as well with the partner that you're collaborating in terms of third-party logistics or 4PL and so on. And last but not the least is there is zero track and trace across the whole product genealogy as such, from when it's being produced to when it's in transit. So you're not able to take the decisions on the fly or on the go to be able to meet the consumer demand. In the new world scenario, what is happening is very simple. There's cross-functional collaboration, firstly, that takes place. And secondly, there's also potential for you to improve how you can sense demand. Yeah. And how does this work? Basically, using SAP's IBP, for example, one of our customers are able to capture, or many of our customers were being able to capture mid and long term demand using special machine learning algorithms or any out of the box algorithms that can be available, such as moving average, simple moving average, ARIMA, auto ARIMA, and so on. They utilized our IBP's response and supply to do a quick check in terms of allocation plans. That means based on my demand, based on different availability of my capacity, which is adjusted on the fly, I'm able to do an allocation plan that is quick to respond to the variabilities in demand and supply. And based on this allocation, of course, they got recommendations and they could do interactive planning on the fly to be able to adjust capacity, change their source of supply, for example, or even do a demand leveling in terms of what can they meet via the existing stock transfers happening between different warehouses. This is then released. So from the whole supply network plan is then released into a more operative execution plan. That means you can do now a production plan and a detailed schedule for that plan in terms of your production needs for your shop floor. And interactively, you're able to run different supply algorithms that will help you to instantaneously identify different critical bottleneck situations. And it's not just about identifying these bottleneck situations. It's about creating the right action for the identified bottleneck situations by synchronizing, firstly, your planning, secondly, your production planning, and thirdly, your scheduling as well. And if you're able to ensure planning meets execution and vice versa, that means you're able to synchronize plans across the board, being able to optimize your production plans and create a detailed schedule, and then propagate that back into your supply chain network, then you're able to basically seamlessly understand using a single platform what can I deliver in the best particular fashion in time, and what transportation mode can I basically select to meet that specific needs, right? And you're able to, of course, create multiple scenarios on the fly using IBP and EPPDS to understand in this particular situation, what is the best possible case that I can go towards and achieve a specific aim. And on the other hand side, you also have your worst case scenarios that you could create to say, hey, if such a situation arises, what is the worst case and how can I basically overcome the worst case scenarios in the best possible way, right? And this is another example that that I basically brought onto the table. Of course, I don't want to run through this. I had two more specific examples for you, but given the interest of time, we would any which way share these slides with you so you could definitely look at that. But it's also about just to give you a quick overview, and then I go into the Q&A. It's not just about supply chain network, or it's not just about retail. It's not just about any other specific industry, right? There are multiple use cases from across the board, ranging from planning to manufacturing to logistics processes. And it's the same with procurement, where we are able to basically streamline overall settlement processes from quote to cash, or we are able to electronically track and trace the overall product genealogy coming from the supplier across the whole business network in a very streamlined fashion. And there are multiple such use cases where customers have benefited from connecting the dots, if I have to put it that way, and being able to have proposals to basically have certain proposals or recommendation to select the right supplier to give that particular material which is short, for example. And this is exactly how this is the example that talks about how we can reimagine operational procurement processes and simplify these complex settlement processes along the path. And the last one is all about, as I said, the maintenance process. That means moving from a reactive, unplanned downtime to being able to sense via IoT. You're able to sense and take in a time series of information related to the asset's health, and you're able to use machine learning algorithms to basically predict the future state of that specific asset in the future, and you're able to schedule in real time certain maintenance of that specific asset that needs maintenance in a very proactive manner. Yeah, and this is basically from a utilities industry example where we say, hey, how does it look like traditionally in terms of unplanned maintenance, to how does it look like from a new world scenario where you're able to predict what is going to happen to a specific asset and create a service at the end to basically cater to the needs of that maintenance on the fly before the user even complains about that asset. Yeah, and this basically goes into that direction. I want to take just 2 minutes to basically speak about sustainability. I think we all know sustainability has become a very, very big factor in our day-to-day lives, and not just our day-to-day lives, but also companies are striving to improve their top line. Along with this, they also want to improve their green line, right? And they want to basically embed sustainability across their product design, across their planning. That means they're able to reduce emissions and also ethically source materials. They also want to improve the sustainability quotient by minimizing waste during manufacturing and also ensure that environmental impact is as less as possible, if not zero. And they want to be able to deliver to the needs of the customer by following an optimized path that, first of all, has good mileage and also reduces the carbon footprint overall. And they want to be able to operate their products in an efficient way such that energy consumption is not basically skyrocketing, right? And also it provides a safety environment for their specific workers to thrive. And lastly, across the whole network, remember sustainability is not just about scope one, which is basically the in-house, but also looks at scope three, which also is about your network, right? So enabling this collaboration across your whole supply chain network enables circular economy, which is nothing but closed loop processes, such that you are reusing, refurbishing, and recycling needed materials. And based on that, you're able to create a more sustainable business model. And that's exactly what we do believe sustainability can be embedded into Industry 4.0 initiatives. And SAP, of course, already helps its customers providing a lot of these information. And I'm more than happy if you have any questions to basically answer them in the next 8 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry to run through the last two use cases, but I'm more than happy to share the documents with you. With this, I hand it over back to Pawan and Nandita. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun. So if anyone has questions, you can put it onto the chat window. We can take up few questions. Meanwhile, to summarize what Arjun has explained nicely, I mean, to connect from the earlier session, in the earlier session, we discussed about the Industry 4.0 concepts, and in the current session, Arjun covered how different organizations globally are leveraging digital technologies and adopting these Industry 4.0 principles across the company, not just in a siloed one function way, but across the company, how are they applying and how are they reaping benefits out of it. I think he also covered around a few industries like utilities, retail, automotive, CPG, and few others. So it is important for us to understand how different industries are adopting Industry 4.0 principles, and then by leveraging these digital technologies, and then achieving these benefits. Yeah. So if I need to summarize, this is what the session is all about. way. And one final closing remark from Arjun was, it's not just only about, achieving the efficiency, operational efficiencies, or it's not about supply chain resiliency. It's also about how do you embed the sustainability principles, the environment consciousness and sustainability principles into the every process within your organization. How do you embed them into the processes so that all your processes not only just run efficient and resilient, but also more sustainable way? So with that, I can conclude the way what Arjun explained during this session today. And any questions, please put it onto the chat window. We'll wait for another minute or couple of minutes.
So there is one question. I will read out the question. The question is
Please.
given the comparative cost of internet between India and China, and also the speed of internet, how does India as a country compete with agility of countries like China?
Can you, Arjun, is that clear, or do you want the question to be pasted onto the chat window
Yeah, I
again
think
or
it's
something?
about cost efficiency from an internet standpoint, right? And
Exactly.
between
Right.
different.
Right.
So I think that's a very narrow way of thinking. I would think at this point in time, right? There's a broader picture. Of course, cost of internet is important, no doubt. With 5G coming into picture, this will also be even more crucial going forward for sure. This will, of course, help the companies to be more and more digital across different pillars, especially in areas which it was not yet receiving internet facilities before. I would still think the overall cost of manufacturing needs to be taken into account as compared to the cost of internet service provision in itself. Yeah. That's because the overall cost of provisioning of the internet is borne by the company, and the companies today don't account for that level of availability as such. With 5G being more generically available going forward, I think this would basically balance out the equation across different regions and countries. But that's just what I can think about immediately, right? And I think in India, they would also come up with ways in which they can subsidize costs to ensure that 5G is basically adopted across the region. And hopefully there is a closing out factor that happens between India and China. And we're already on track to do that. So I wouldn't see any reasons why we should be worried on that.
Also, if I can add on to what Arjun mentioned, right? I mean, if you see any technology, for example, mobility, if I take mobile, right? I mean, unless the technology that's existed decades back, few decades back, I would say, but it has become so, once it has become so affordable, when it has been into use in every aspect of the business today, if you observe, right? In a similar way, and the IoT, the one of the underlying technology for Industry 4.0, or the edge computing, or few other cloud computing and others, so on, right? So over a period of time, we observe the trend of the technological elements becoming more and more affordable. Even if you look at the cost of a chip from way back 20 years back to now, it has come down drastically by 10 times, or even more than not 10 times, 40 times, even much more than that. So because of that, we see a great trend in terms of the hardware infrastructure costs getting down, and this is a good sign for the adoption of Industry 4.0 as well. Yeah, just to complement what Arjun mentioned.
So there are
Any
two
other?
more questions.
Please.
There is a question from Mr. Manjunath. Is there any examples of industries where inventory turnover ratio increased from 5 to 15%?
Can you repeat that, Nandita? Sorry.
Is there any examples of industries where inventory turnover ratio increased from 5 to 15%?
There are, of course, examples. I can also think about an implementation that I had done in my previous life. As Pawan mentioned, I come from the consulting side, so I've been implementing solutions for customers, right? We've been able to basically enable SNOP processes, which is sales and operations planning process, as well as sales and operations execution process, which is SNOE. And in those process steps, we were able to optimize using supply chain algorithms, their whole supply chain network. That means we were able to do it across their semiconductor. It was a semiconductor firm. We were able to reduce the overall inventory, as we were able to improve their overall inventory turnover ratio uh, over the margin of even 15%. By utilizing the right set of lot sizing procedures that we were able to guide them. Yeah. So there are, of course, examples from different industries. The one that I indicated was more or less from the semiconductor side. There's also in the automotive side, we've seen an improvement that we could generate, and also industrial manufacturing. I think these three are the main ones in which I at least worked on, and I can give you an example on those.
So the next question is, how can MSME embrace these technologies and yet be competitive in the global arenas?
I actually think that MSMEs are the front runners, to be honest, in this Industry 4.0 transition, if I have to call it that way. In fact, the larger companies are a little bit slower because they're doing a very smaller POC, proof of concept, and then trying to bring it into scale. So they're taking their time. But the smaller companies are actually utilizing this as a competitive advantage directly because they are digitally savvy. Yeah, they're digitally native. That means the processes that they have actually established over a period of time is something that they could improve using any of these technology sources that I basically mentioned to you as an enabler, right? And I've at least noticed across different regions of Europe as well as in Asia Pacific that it's more or less actually that MSMEs are the first front runners in this case, where they're taking the source of information, understanding what is the best practice to be utilized in context of a manufacturing or in context of a logistics. So they're starting off small. It's not about digitizing the whole company as such immediately, but it's about starting small, specific process steps. They know what they want to achieve in terms of their objective. And because their objective is so clear in the MSME area, I think they're able to digitalize it and utilize the digitalization to their competitive advantage even faster than the large scale companies in different markets as such. That's at least what I noticed so far.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Rao, for your detailed information, and also Mr. Pawan Kumar for leading this initiative. Thank you, participants, for making time to join us. We will keep you informed of the next topic in the series shortly.
Yep. Thank you again,
Thank you,
Arjun,
sir.
and thank you, Nandita,
Thank
for
you for
hosting
having me.
us, and looking forward for the upcoming sessions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.